I'll keep it short since we're already starting a little late. Where else do we have to go? It's a great pleasure to have you all here. It's nice to see some faces that weren't able to be here for the full week but wanted to come up and see what was going on and hear the poetry, and some other people from the community. So thank you all for coming, and for those participants, we are not even halfway done. So we're, I think, I'm having a ball. I'm already exhausted, so I figure that must be some sign that some work is going on, both in my head as well as in my feet. So we're going to hear from 6 readers this evening, 3 workshop leaders and 3 special guests. And we don't need to do too much in the way of introduction, but we're going to have 3 readers and a short break, and then the final 3 readers. Be myself, and then Brenden Constantine and Natalie Diaz, and then a little break, and then Matthew Dickman, Richard Kenney, and finally Diane Wakoski. As the co-coordinator of the week, along with Heather Companion, I am just delighted that that we're so far pulling it off. We managed to get everybody up the mountain despite flight delays and murders on the highway and exploding cars in Hemet and delayed luggage and all of our various treks. I'm delighted that we have. I value the way that the Idyllwild, whatever is happening in poetry at Idyllwild is connected to all of the exciting poetry communities in Southern California. And I'm also happy to see that we have people from many other places, including New Orleans and Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Seattle, and various forms in the Northwest, Arkansas, and I'm sure I'm leaving out some other far-flung travelers. So I think that's wonderful. We need to break out some more chairs there in the back, perhaps. So I won't introduce myself. I'll just blather on in a minute. Many of you know Brenden Constantine, who I'll say a few things about now, so that we can just follow one another up. Brenden Constantine is a longtime Idyllwildian, friend of Idyllwild. He was a graduate of, what was it called, Desert Sun?
Yes.
Was that were you in the last year of the Desert Sun School? I don't mean to.
Yes, it was a high school that was later bulldozed to become Astro Camp.
Right, as will all schools. Yes. Right. That was a sign of the future, I think. I'm sure it must have felt like it. Brenden, the poet who I admire very much, teaches at the in various guises down in Los Angeles, including the Windward School, and I'm sure things that I'm leaving out, and many of you know him very well. I believe this is Letters to Guns, the most recent book. Well, it's an awfully good one. I love it. This is a fantastic book. I recommend that you get this book in addition to his most recent one, Letters to Guns. The newest one is called
Calamity Joe.
Oh, of course. Oh, that preceded this one. And then Natalie Diaz will read after Brenden, which is not an easy position to be in. Brendan's a great reader. I apologize for that placement, but I know that you can handle it. You're a competitive person. I know you can do it. I'm just going to read Natalie's biography because it's so fantastic that I want to make sure I don't embellish it and turn her into an astronaut or anything. Natalie grew up in the Fort Mojave Indian Village in Needles, California, on the banks of the Colorado River. She is Mojave and an enrolled member of the Gila River Indian community. After playing professional basketball, if you don't know this, it's okay to gasp. After playing professional basketball in Europe and Asia for several years, she completed an MFA in poetry and fiction from Old Dominion University in 2007, which she doesn't point out that she also played in the Final Four of the women's tournament for Old Dominion as well, which I think is fantastic. It wasn't the Final Two, but it was the Final Four. I mean, it was, it's a good showing, It's a good show. She currently lives in Mojave Valley, Arizona, and directs a language revitalization program at Fort Mojave, her home reservation, where she works with the last elder speakers of the Mojave language. And I'm very grateful that she was able to come up at such short notice. But she is, I knew that she would be an easy person to ask because I know that she already knows and is fond of Idyllwild as a former participant in the Idyllwild summer program, where some of you know her from. So, Now I feel it's weird after talking about these people I admire to then read, as if I was introducing myself. But I'll just imagine for a moment that I have done all of the things that Brenden and Natalie have done. They were difficult, but I did them. I did them anyway, and I did them for you. Thank you. I'd like to read a few poems from my new book, Rough Day, which just came out, which I've talked about this afternoon. This is my mother on the cover with her pet crow, Aspinwall, Pennsylvania, 1939. So it's a book-length poem without titles. Rough Day is the title of everything. All of the poems begin with one line, which by default becomes a kind of title, but isn't meant to be. So I'll read through things without a great deal of pausing. I mean, there'll be pausing within them, and the way I talk is a lot of pauses, and I apologize in advance for that. Should I speak closer to the microphone? Yes. You like this better? If after you've sampled some of the verse, you feel that it's a little too clear, you can just ask me to back away and wait till Brenden comes. My name's in the forest. I want to rip paper currency off the walls, build upon these misunderstandings. The garage man is missing, always. It begins when I leave the room, both directions, out of house and body. I like the asps your eyes make before I can get lightness. Puppets tumble in the washer. I carry a few coins, bright songs churning my pocket, tones of last gestures, terrible array. Hungry to get bright cloud, I'm headless. I carry a rock scoured white. Why, there's a driven word for it, and North American equivalent. A stop-action uncertainty of markets, restlessly tying into consequence. The manner in which people talk around a child. How my father refuses to give his cat a name. Whereas, although my deficit is, I look into each thing. How we tear the billboard down is how we tear the house down. You down. Me. Each time I come home, I fall apart. Till continent hide, and I stand birch, burn blade, and yet when I suggest over toast, the president ought to be tried for war crimes, my father over eyeglasses says, that's not how grown-ups talk. The soldier says being a soldier is always having a place to run in place. It is flats collapse. And when war shakes loose from fate's longest tail feather, first jobs feel stone turn cold under palm. Rather be a tractor, like a marble bust's churning shoulder, and a man inside the face steps down from machine, goes in for lunch. Yet from where I stand, mind's a claw in that difficult library that lends. I struggle with myself, of course. I struggle with these lines, trying to yoke together the ox of meaning and the other one. When I land and get in the taxi, I have to ask what my driver thinks my name is, because he says, "You're him," but not who. It's never cleared up. "Do you like fish?" he asks. They have great fish. Rounding the memorial, his tape deck plays. Navigating the detours around the mansion, his tape deck plays. Pivoting around the museums and hotels, passing assassination sites and conspiracy shadows, retracing the final parade of the army. His tape deck plays some old piano music I like. trickling from return's edge. A song about the desire upon release from prison to win the good return. Whatever I have been doing all my life, I am doing now. Here beneath the drop ceiling, a lost dancer, an unemployed machinist. At the nameless house, edited from footage, we only live a moment. What the diorama excludes, we may be able to see. One another's pain, over the waves, under the cliff. Body, over thoughts of body. And yet, one Wednesday I sold my car, the one my mother and father got lost in, coming back from the cemetery. Her asleep in the back seat, white-haired, eyeglasses in her hand. Now I take to streets and slow Seattle down. I was a palace. I was a forest. One scene and then another, a sun. Whatever the word is for the living. Suddenly alert and trying to get it all down and playbill margins between changes. Read it back to me. Meanwhile, I am preparing a way to miss the exiting animal. Grizzly bear, whooping crane. The slow, hesitant, and administrative desert tortoise that I will probably outlive, or my son will. Already I see that my death will or will not be like extinction, if only in the sense that there was some noise, then there was no noise. Yet why am I grieving? Yet why, when I am grieving, do I insist the dead are inexact, without specifying how? Extinction, the bad trophy. And this is a good knot for holding a horse. And this is the desert's smell after a rain. And here is the canyon where we stop for love. And these are the red and orange seeds of the ocotillo. And these are the spines of the penciled cholla. And here's the debris. And here is the rain. And here is how to live with almost nothing. And beyond. Even as the rattlesnake takes its shade from my long standing. Even as the tarantula goes to the highway at sunset and is not struck. A mile outside of Yellowstone, this book sort of begins in my mind in Yellowstone, where I worked in college. And I just went back there last week with a bunch of nieces and nephews. And it's a magical place to me, even though it's always kind of in Disney Technicolor and wildlife specials. Although it's changed a lot from that, and it's changed a lot from when I worked there. And my nephew, I was so excited to show them these things that mean so much to me. And my nephew was looking at was up at the overlook to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and he refused to look at it. He said, "It's too boring to look at." I won't even look at it because I know how boring it is. It must be. When do we get to the hotel? This kid. Anyway, well, I was a kid when I was there, and I loved it. A mile outside of Yellowstone, loose sky fallen into bruise, I put down my hitchhiking sign, wait for dawn at a gas station. I work mink oil into my boots and talk about the early snows, sketch in ballpoint a stranger's face on the last page of the book of elegies I've been carrying around. I'm trying to find where influence end, a force emigrant in spirit, and forget the old language, silent and defeated. To see the original inquiry was too small. A child passes into an empty house, passing into uncertain encounter. What will save me is the taste of miles, dirty under midnight skillet. The West has helped me listen to myself. The West is a place that kills and kills and kills. And one last section, one last little bit. I'm picking these at random, pretty much. I am a child of ghosts. So when these new ghosts come ashore in black boats, drag them up the sand, when they take occupancy in the abandoned house on the bluff. Not even the baker's blind dog sleeps. I am a child, ripening mischief in open cupboards. No one else knows this no one else hears this new ghost music. No one will tell them go away. No road between the dead's house and the living road. Keeping low, I belly through tall grass, not breaking a stem, but closer to the house I tangle. Vine drags my ankles, thorn pulls my skin. I free myself toward the house in the darkness that lives inside a drawer. The kind of night that worry is, but these through the lit window are not my ghosts, dancing nude around a bottle, singing Wookie Wookie. I hurl fists of peat against the window, but they keep dancing. I light some tinder and throw it against the glass, but they keep dancing, and the dance goes like this. I'll leave it there. Thank you all very much. Brenden Constantine.
Ed Skoog, ladies and gentlemen. This is a short poem by Holly Prado. It's called The Garden. Rilke has said that each man will take with him from the earth one word he loves best. I've been thinking all day, just in case, and can't go beyond lizard. I'm afraid it's come to this. This is from the new book, which begins with two quotes, one from Friedrich Nietzsche, the other from Tolstoy. And a couple of reviewers have assumed that I made up the Tolstoy quote. I did not. This first from Nietzsche: "What is done out of love lies beyond good and evil." And this from Tolstoy: "Friedrich Nietzsche was stupid and abnormal." This is before the flood. My father remembers nothing, or rather, he remembers where it used to be. See that building? When I was a kid, there was nothing there. And next door where the school is, nothing. We walk through his hometown, down a street with an Indian name no Indian lives to translate. It means Dream River, he says, or rambling, confused river, I used to know. No one believes their parents were children. That is, you need more than their word. They have to do something, stifle laughter, cry into their hands, stand tiptoe. We all look younger on tiptoe. My father peers over a fence, another new building. This was all sand, he says. For Bethlehem. Bethlehem steel. His shoe is untied. He bends to lace it. I almost help. Later, I reach for his hand at a crosswalk. Let's go back, he says. To how it was? No, to the house. I need to lie down. We turn, and the town surges under our feet, comes over us in a wooden tide. I get my arms under his, kick for both of us. He doesn't try, doesn't speak when his house goes by. Wow, that was a great reaction. That was quite wonderful. I used to get those reactions in rehab, actually. That was. Everybody's been, right? At least once, yeah? Show of hands? Never mind. Yes. There's a few poems here that just got into a journal I really like, because these poems got into it, called Ghost Town. This is another one with fathers in it. This is All Father's Eve. Traditionally, there's a dinner served before dark. If you live in town, traffic will be bad. Up country, the cows have made an acre of corduroy. A dull spell. All your people come, people who share your father, and they must bring excuses, something like, the highway is slow, or the highway is crazy, or I wish they'd build a highway. Inside, you want to have the TV going or music a little loud. Your father isn't visible at first. He can't appear until everyone's there, until the air is musked with bacon and eggs and coffee, because dinner is breakfast. He comes out then, mid-sentence, telling the nearest guest to turn off the damn TV or whatever's making that noise. How can anyone hear themselves think, yes, it's good to see you, but let's sit down. He's so hungry he could eat a horse, maybe two, a year of horses, all the men riding them, the cattle, the field, the darkening shapes of women on a hill. Any former theater students in the house? Two, fantastic. You are no doubt familiar with a dynamic known as the soliloquy, a speech uttered by a character in full hearing of the other characters, but they can't hear it for some reason. I've been fascinated with something I've learned is called somniloquy, which is talking in your sleep. Basically a speech where not even you are in on it. And apparently everybody does this at some point, and I became fascinated with the idea of all of this testimony witnessed by no one that we just sort of give over the course of a lifetime. And so I've attempted to write a somniloquy, and they took this too. This is, and I've written it phonetically to accommodate the slurring. Somniloquy. Wait. This is time. Go. You should go now. Your mom's coming. Door's too small. Can't fit. Use the window instead and jump. It's dark. Dark outside. You can hear 'em walking in there and singing. Your ma is singing in the bed. You need to hear this. She's telling the house how to find you. Thank you. I assume you're clapping because I appeared to be in pain. And this is a poem that comes from one of those things where you catch yourself saying something that you maybe said a bunch and never thought about it. And then suddenly you hear it one day, as I did the first time I really paid attention to the sentence, "The last thing I want to do is hurt you." You know, as though you were like making your calendar or, so. This is, "The last thing I want to do is hurt you." The last thing I want to do is hurt you. Before that, my love, long before that, I'd like to learn another language, maybe Portuguese, though people tell me Hindi and Mandarin are the future, the tongues of men on the moon. Which reminds me, before I hurt you, I want to go to space and float like a wing. What do you think happens to birds in zero gravity? Do they panic or relax? Finally, relax. Do they become fish? Someone must know by now, some astro or cosmonaut who said mostly to himself, "Don't be afraid. I just want to know if you can live without doing what you must. The last thing I want to do is hurt you. Before I see the Grand Canyon, the pyramids of Giza, the little cave at Laverna where St. Francis slept and listened to God and went blind. First, I want to see my home again, my heavy home, the breakable life I already know. I want to have some visions, too, angels or ghosts or natural disasters. I want to warn the village. Any village. The dam is breaking, the fire is building, the air is filling with cows. Time to make a list. How mad will you be if you don't swim the 100 seas, don't dive the sky, never go to the Cobra show? My love, you can take it out on me. Keeping track of my time here. All right. It's a tiny little poem I want to dedicate to my friend Natalie. Sorry, I thought I pulled it out. It's for Natalie Diaz. This is called Rule. If you break enough lines, eventually you have something that'll kindle and catch like a tar paper shack or a wedding dress. A long-gone woman once took a stone to all her words until her tongue flared like a map of war. A library stands where she's buried, and people leave gifts in the parking lot. Rock, paper, scissors. And lastly, this is my last poem. I thank you all for your attention. I thank you all for letting me sit at the cool kids table. Last summer, I was up here and poised, like many geeks, over... I was mooching Wi-Fi to keep track of the Mars landing. And I heard a guy from JPL say something amazing that nobody else seemed to react to. Excuse me, to which no one else seemed to react. But he said, and I quote, "The cameras we have aimed at Mars now are so sensitive they could show us a dining room chair on the planet's surface. Of course, we won't see a dining room chair. At least I don't think we will." So, like, of course, I immediately, see, I see sort of like a Louis XIV kind of like spindly, on the... And, that's not in this poem, but that sort of sets the table, as it were, for this poem. Another thing that I kept hearing people say was that they were hopeful that the exploration of Mars would not necessarily reveal signs of life. They didn't say that, but a couple of times I heard the phrase, reveal whether or not there was still life on Mars. And I, of course, latched onto the phrase, still life on Mars. And I started to think, oh, God, the things that one puts in expects to see in a still life painting. So let me gather up my stuff, because there's nothing, more embarrassing than the poet, like, actually dropping stuff as they walk away from the podium. It's up there with, like, a bald guy with a fly on his head, It's just sort of, anyway. Okay. So, again, thank you. This is Still Life on Mars. It's taken everything to bring them here. The peaches, grapes, oysters, the goblet of wine, the table and cloth. Hardest of all was keeping the snail alive 300 days, hearty enough to survive 2 seconds of posing. We place it last, assuming the other props will bear in the red air. They don't. Before the snail dies, and it dies in one Mississippi, the peaches liquefy, the grapes too, the oysters implode like novae. It's a massacre right down to the good linen and Chateau Latour. We paint it anyway, going slow to compensate for our ridiculous gloves, stiff necks, the dim light of the afternoon, which is blue here. It's worth all this to get it right. Indeed, our life has never been so urgently shown. How brief the fruit, the vintage and vessel, how apt the snail, the half-inch of its glittering service. Thank you. Natalie Diaz, ladies and gentlemen.
Iwan Jahotan, Ivak Ilum, Hakuloi Munch, Fort Mojave Munch, Natalie Imoik, Ed, Brenden, Diane, Matthew, everybody. Thank you for having me. Nyep Gunyavav. I'm coming today from Fort Mojave, and I do a lot of language work there. So one of the things that we have agreed to do as language learners is to carry our language with us when we go. So I work with the last 3 speakers of my language. It's really good to be back here. I think Idyllwild is probably, it's someplace I credit with helping me get my first book published. It was here at a reading that I met Ted Kuzer, who, helped champion my work and sent it, to Copper Canyon Press, which is, has been a really great place for me to be, and a great family with some of these crazy guys out here. So, and Brenden, while I was here in a workshop, Brenden introduced me to Gwendolyn McEwen, and The Red Bird You Wait For was a poem that just, I think that really opened up a whole new room of writing for me. So I'm going to read a couple poems from my first book, When My Brother Was an Aztec. And this is my little brother who is on the cover. So this is a triolet, so you'll hear the repetition, and it's intentional, so you don't think I'm screwing up. Downhill triolets. Sisyphus and my brother. The phone rings. My brother was arrested again. Dad hangs up, gets his old blue Chevy going, and heads to the police station. It's not the first time. It's not even the second. No one is surprised my brother was arrested again. The guy fell on my knife was his one phone call explanation. He stabbed a man 5 times in the back is the official accusation. My brother is arrested again and again and again. Our dad, our Sisyphus, pushes his old blue heart up to the station. God, Lionel Richie, and my brother. Ring, ring, ring at 2 a.m. means meth's got my brother in the slammer again. God told him, break into Grandma's house, and Lionel Richie gave him that feeling of dancing on the ceiling. My dad said, at 2 a.m. God and Lionel Richie don't make good friends. Ring, ring, ring at 2 a.m. means meth's got my brother by the balls again. With God in one ear and Lionel in the other, who can win? Not my brother. So he made a meth pipe from the light bulb and smoked himself reeling. Ring, ring, ring at 2 a.m. means my brother's tweaked himself into jail again. It wasn't his fault, not with God guiding his foot through the door and honey-voiced Lionel whispering, hard to keep your feet on the ground with such a smooth-ass ceiling. Tribal cops, Geronimo, Jimi Hendrix, and my brother. Some of my brothers are tribal policemen, so my father always jokes and says his kids are the cops and the robbers. So this came from there. The tribal cops are in our front yard calling in on a little black radio. I got a 1015 for 267 and 415. The 1015 they got is my brother, a Geronimo wannabe who thinks he's holding out. In his mind, he's playing backup for Jimmy. He is an itching, bopping head full of fire. Mom cried, "Stop acting so crazy." But he kept banging air drums against the windows and ripped out all the screens. This time, we called the cops, and when they came, we just watched. We have been here before, and we know 267 and 415. We'll get him 1015. His eyes are escape caves torch lit by his 267 of choice, crystal methamphetamine. Finally, he's in the back of the cop car, hands in handcuffs, shiny and shaped like infinity. Now that he's 1015, he's kicking at the doors and security screen. A 267 fiend saying, "I got desires that burn and make me want a 415. His tongue is flashing around his mouth like a World's Fair Ferris wheel. But he's no Geronimo. Geronimo would find a way out instead of giving in so easily. And he just keeps on giving. I wrote this poem. This is a newer poem. Home, because my work is so wrapped up with home, I have to try and get away now to write. And so I've learned that about myself. So I try and take myself other places to write and try and block family off, but this is an instance where that didn't happen. Cranes, mafiosos, and a Polaroid camera. Kearney, Nebraska Crane Trust. I had a few days left of my stay at the Crane Sanctuary in Kearney, Nebraska, when my brother called. It was 3:24 a.m. "It's me," he said. "It's your brother." He had taken apart another Polaroid camera and needed me to explain how to put it back together. His voice was a snare drum, knocking and quick. He was crying. I didn't want to wake the other visitors and knew he'd keep calling hour after hour, day after day, lifetime after miserable lifetime, until I answered. "Just tell me what to do. You know what to do," he pleaded. I should know how to help my brother by now. He and I have had this exact conversation before. If I love him, if I really love him, why haven't I learned to reassemble a Polaroid camera? Instead, I told him about the sandhill cranes, the way they dance, moving into and giving way to one another, bowing down, cresting and collapsing their wings, necks and shoulders, silver curls of smoky rhythm. But he didn't believe me. My brother believes the mafia placed a transmitter deep within his Polaroid camera, but he can't believe in dancing cranes. "You think this is a joke?" he whispers. "These are fucking mafiosos I'm talking about. You're probably next." He hung up on me. That dawn, I aimed my digital camera at the sky until the last of an island of late-rising cranes lifted into the metalled air. I couldn't take my eyes from the barrel of lens, my finger fast trigger against the black skeleton of camera. I wondered what it would look like cracked open to its upside-down mirrors and shiny levers, how many screws there were, how many lantern-lit cranes might come unfurling out of that cage. I wondered what I would look like if the darkened chambers of my body were unlocked, what streams of light might escape and reveal about the things I collect and hide. And is there a difference between aperture and wound? Mostly, I wondered where my brother keeps getting those goddamned Polaroid cameras. My brother, my wound. He was calling in the bulls from the street. They came like a dark river, a blur of chest and hoof, everything moving, under, splinter, hooked their horns through the walls. Light hummed the holes like yellow jackets. My mouth was a nest torn empty. Then he was at the table, then in the pig's jaws. He was not hungry, he was stop, he was bad apple, he was choking. So I punched my fists against his stomach. Mars flew out and broke open or bloomed. How many small red eyes shut in that husk? He said, "Look, look," and they did. He said, "Lift up your shirt," and I did. He slid his fork beneath my ribs. "Yes," he sang, "a Jesus side wound." It wouldn't stop bleeding. He reached inside and turned on the lamp. I never knew I was also a lamp until the light fell out of me, dripped down my thigh, flew up in me, caught in my throat like a canary. Canaries really means dogs, he said. He put on his shoes. You started this with your mouth, he pointed. Where are you going? I asked. To ride the Ferris wheel, he answered, and climbed inside me like a window. And I'll finish with one from the book. So on the res, we grew up with government food. We call them commods or commodities. Like we always joke and say bod by commod or body by commodity, you know, so because they're not so healthy. So if anyone's ever had government food, this is my ode to government food. It has an epigraph from Mencius. And is it only the mouth and belly which are injured by hunger? Why I hate raisins. Love is a pound of sticky raisins packed tight in black and white government boxes the day we had no groceries. I told my mom I was hungry. She gave me the whole bright box. USDA stamped like a fist on the side. I ate them all in 10 minutes. Ate too many too fast. It wasn't long before those old grapes set like black clay at the bottom of my belly, making it ache and swell. I complained, I hate raisins. I just wanted a sandwich like other kids. Well, that's all we've got, my mom sighed. And what other kids? Everyone but me, I told her. She said, you mean the white kids. You want to be a white kid? Well, too bad, 'cause you're my kid. I cried, at least the white kids get a sandwich. At least the white kids don't get the shits. That's when she slapped me, left me holding my mouth and stomach devoured by shame. I still hate raisins, but not for the crooked commodity lines we stood in to get them, winding around and in the tribal gymnasium, not for the awkward cardboard boxes we carried them home in, not for the shits or how they distended my belly. I hate raisins because now I know my mom was hungry that day too, and I ate all the raisins. Thank you.
before we leave. I will get one in your hand. Can I sign those? I'll give you the card.
I'd like to swiftly introduce Matthew Dickman. We've got most everybody back. They can wander in. I'll just kind of tell some jokes for a minute. I don't know any. One of the participants was a student of mine when I taught high school in New Orleans a long time ago, and she is reminding me of all of my worst habits as a high school teacher. And I guess it's just like now, a lot of digressions and attempts at jokes, and that's 90% of it, I think, right? Yeah. Some content eventually, but little. Precisely what I was fishing for. That's right. I'm very glad that we're able to have Matthew Dickman back up on the Hill this year. Good friend and fantastic poet, and he's been one of the poets of my acquaintance who has risen the bar, lifted the rising bar. I don't know. Who has who I'm grateful for him and his work personally, because his work along with a few other people reminded me at a time when I needed to be reminded what was really important and valuable about poetry, which one often loses sight of and then finds it again, usually in somebody's work. You all mostly know him. His newest book, Wakoski's Revolver, which is fantastic, cheerful, as you can tell from the title, and as you may remember from his craft talk on the last day of Poetry Week last week, was mostly the last poems of suicides. It's a nice way to send us off, so it's a good way to have you return. Yes, right. But still, ultimately, I think a poet of joy. I don't know what else. What other important credentials there are. He's found a wide audience, a lot of respect and rewards, and still lives in Portland, Oregon, and was able to join us this week for today and the next couple of days. And very grateful to have his presence up here on the Hill. So thank you for coming, Matthew.
Thanks for having me back. Okay, I'm going to read a couple poems to you. Yay! Weird. I know. I know you weren't expecting this, but here's some poems. In heaven. No dog chained to a spike in a yard of dying grass like the dogs I grew up with, starving, overfed, punched in the face by children. No children, no firecrackers slip down the long throats of bottles in the first days of summer. No sky exploding, no blood, no bones, because we were the bones. No more Lord my God or maps made of fire, a small blaze burning right where I grew up, so I could, if I wanted to, point to the flame that was 82nd Avenue. No milk in the fridge, no more walking through the street to the little store that sold butterfly knives. No more knives, no more honey now that all the sweetness is gone. Though we were the sweetness, that we needed something for our tongues. No more cheap soap. No more washing our mouths out because motherfucker and because fuck off came swimming out of us like fish from the Pacific Ocean. No hummingbirds, no Band-Aids, no scraped knees with the dirt and rock from the neighborhood because we were the dirt. No young mothers smoking cigarettes on the porch while the sky got pretty before night came on, though they were even prettier and the sky turned against them. No punk rock, no prom, no cheap high heels left in the rain in a parking lot, no empty bottles of wine coolers because we were the empty bottles, no throwing them against the wall behind the school because we were the glass that was shattering. No more looking toward the west, no east, no north or south, just us standing here together, asking each other if we remembered anything, what we loved, what loved us, who yelled our names first. And the central, very humorous, lively section of poems in my book is actually a sectional elegy for my older brother who committed suicide a few years ago. So I thought, let's just get this party going. Satellite. I'm sitting beneath the bent live oak, wishing the plane blinking above me was a satellite that would shoot images of my older brother back down into my brain so I could print them out and paste them on the wall. I have to keep looking at this one picture of him to remember how his jaw was and which side of the moon he parted his hair. He's always away from me now, some animal or constellation that walked out of the world but for rumors and half-skeletons found in the Congo, drawings of what he might have looked like. My brain dreams about cities from outer space, a place with a name like Kilimanjaro, where he might still be walking around in his Vision streetwear high tops, or even a shadow like our father, who talked about Costco the night of my brother's cremation and how pumpkin-y the pumpkin pie was, though he bought it in a frozen pack of 20. Just like a real bakery, he said. You just throw it in the oven. He kept saying that. You just throw it in the oven. You just throw it in the oven. I'm going to read just 3 more poems. They're each 45 pages long. Thank you for coming. See me after class. I'll just say this quickly because I'll talk about more of it later. But I love Diane Wakoski. And I'm lucky enough to have her in my life. At the movies with Wakoski, Diane and I sitting in the dark, like sitting in a death you actually want, a death you've always wished for, looking toward the lights of Hollywood, the long legs of swimmers, cocktails and rum made out of water and iodine. Earlier that day, something like 12 city blocks crumbled inside me every time I thought of Erica and how walking toward her always felt perfect, like a silver key with a red ribbon announcing its specialness. And how I would suddenly burn away like a shot of whiskey some bride-to-be dropped a match into. Somewhere, Johnny Depp is sleeping or turning to his right because a woman is there and has touched his elbow with the soft cloud of her fingers. Or he's facing the mirror and listening to all the gods inside him begin to rage. The god of childhood and the god of his mother, his father. Diane and I are standing on a street corner together in the world, after the credits, in the crushed ice rain, looking westward toward the dark sunglass copper tone white beach heaven that waits for us and us alone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love you. Okay. Two more poems. Alley poem. Now I get to be alone again, like I've always wanted to be. And there's nothing anyone can say about it, especially me. Especially since I've been begging for it. Isn't that what they say? He was begging for it, which is awful, but especially for girls. And now I'm alone like a red fire truck, thank God. A red fire truck buried beneath the earth of stuffed animals. The air around me thick as a mouth or a bar of soap, 'cause I was asking for it after all. And after all, sometimes I can just lose it and shake the baby I am. Grab it by the shoulders and shake it into scrambled eggs with toast for a face, and no afterlife for him, and no TV either, and no dessert since he did not do all his chores, though punishing him by making him stay in his room will do no good since he'll like it too much. Better to drag him into an alley where he won't know where he is and tell him to shut up and make him sweep or sing or get him drunk and lie him down on a bed of snow or take off all his clothes and point my finger and laugh and tell him to jump and tell him to beg and shoot him in the head. Shoot him right in the brains, right in the heart, and say, you were asking for it. And then hold him like I do, so he doesn't feel alone. Not like that. This is my last poem. It's about doggies. Sidewalk poem. My mother worked like a dog for so long, it's nice to see her be the owner. There are only really 1,210,000 ways to die. The 5 main ones being your father drinking, your father breathing, your father touching anything at all, your father listening to opera, your father looking at you and saying, I see you. Like Pope Francis, looking at a girl's knees when he was 12, and what made him love Jesus crawled out of his lunch pail right as she crossed her legs in the sign of a cross. Actually, there are only 10 ways to die, but I'm too afraid to say. I'm brave enough to walk home, though. Brave enough for the dark if there's a cross in it, a telephone pole or a weirdly shaped tree. If there's a dog being walked, if there's a dog at all. I want to take this opportunity to say that the Gettysburg Address is the money shot of any speech I've ever read aloud to my mom or dad. Which is to say, if you are ever even a little bit afraid, just know that other people are too. It's not just you standing in the spice aisle at the grocery store, asking where they keep the anise extract, or if you can use vanilla instead. In years to come, when you sign all your letters with your mind only, know that someone is alone in their bed with a body sort of like the body you have, and that she believes that she is dying, that she is thinking about her porous mother and Scotch tape father. You go anywhere in the world, even inside your own self, and your mom and dad will be right there like 2 warm eggs with a little chocolate and blood inside them. I'm sorry. I was just walking home and thinking about my mom and thinking about my dad, and saw one of those blue bags people use to pick up after their dog because they love that stupid dog so much, even though it's not a baby, and even though they can't have sex with it. Not the way you and I have sex, with a ball and a stick, calling each other in from the dark, saying, good girl, and saying, good boy. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Richard Kenney. When David St. John told us a few weeks ago that he wasn't going to be able to come up, to which he regrets, and he sends his love and friendship to you. I thought, first of all, oh no, what am I going to do? After thinking, what is he going to do? But then it was a little bit like I was in a candy shop, though. Which of my favorite poets now, in addition, since those favorite poets weren't able to come, which favorite poets could I get to ask now? And then the game of which ones will come in a week and a half. And that's sort of difficult because people have plans in the summer. And I don't think anyone's plans were more elaborate than Rick Kenney's. He said, I'm about to leave on a cross-country trip with my family. We're going to make a series of stops. We have all these places to go. But I think I can make it. So he managed to come, to interrupt his cross-country journey to be with us. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get to spend time doing one of my favorite things about living in Seattle is occasionally, and not often enough, getting a chance to talk to Rick and hear what's on his mind. Richard Kenney is born in Glens Falls. No disrespect to your hometown, New York. And he won the Yale Younger Poets Prize in 1984 for his first book, The Evolution of the Flightless Bird. And there followed two books that I think everyone should have and try to wrap their head around, Orrery and The Invention of the Zero. And his newest book, which is poems from 1994 to 2007, The One Strand River, it's a gorgeous book, is out on the table. Rick lives in Port Townsend, Washington, but teaches at the University of Washington and next year at the University of Iowa. I treasure his poetry, his erudition, and his charm and humor, and his presence here this week. So please welcome Rick Kenney.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everybody. This has been a lot of fun for me, I must say. That's the wrong one. I'm going to read a number of short poems. We've been talking about short poems in the seminar group, and it's a short period of time. So I'm going to read my second newest poem. The title, I wrote this the day before I came. An accident, because this could be for Steve, because his orientation reminded me a bit of this poem. The title is "They're More Afraid of You Than You Are of Them." No, they're not. That's the poem. Here's the same title. We'll put a 2 after. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, too. This is a double dactyl. It's one of my favorite poetic forms. Maybe you've read them. They all begin with jiggery pokery. One line has to be a single word. Anyway, here it is. Jiggery pokery. Each line is a double dactyl. Jiggery pokery. Writers at Idyllwild, you've risked some dangers here coming to Crone. Herpetological worries aside, there have been poems to dodge in gargantuan cones. I left my family. I jumped ship in Omaha, and they finished the drive to Vermont. So this is a poem for my wife. While traveling, he reluctantly connects. Peering over the rim of the abysm of the inbox, thinking of spelunking that horrible borehole, listless, I thought I noted amongst its sundry kerfufflements the glim of the glowworm, the fool ruffle of jumbucks, foul jowls of pelicans, and from you, Principessa, my clerkish life's only or principal oriole, a kiss. Biography. Darling, I think our baby just said amour. How his mother smiled, eyes abrim with omen. In fact, what the little tyke had said was lawnmower. And that's how the years ahead would go with him and women. And because this is a wonderful age group to be reading to, I must say. This is called, my wife came up with this medical expression. She calls it male pattern blindness. Or oculus pater, perceptual dysfunction, early onset form thought to be progressive and incurable, does not respond to herbal teas, pronounced in circumstances involving shelving and in closets, almost total in refrigerators. The young see age as old-fashioned. You can't read this to the students, the university students. Somewhere say, but the young see the age as old-fashioned, somewhere say between a moral failure and an avoidable foible. If the old fools just took the trouble to go to the gym, when you're hale, you're hardy enough to fear far off the little puff, the black silencer screwed to the barrel of the future, short or long as that may prove, the furtive earwig of the unconventional cell, slick of lymph leaking out in answer. Or nicer, surely, the shy embolism ambling through those precincts of familiarity, the old elm-lined neighborhoods of the cerebrum. Or much better, battering the chest like the old D-train taking its tunnel, whumph. All this is just imagining the actuarial worst, not age, which often comes first. I don't have a title for this poem yet. On time to the strike of a silent bell, inside the chapel of the cell, the heretic is whispering. Spittle flickers on his lips, the lizard into shadow slips, the winter wasp staggering. Soon the lymph begins to leak, telephones commence to speak, the stars back to their westering. Earth laps up above the shins. Another afterlife begins, which feels, I find, like lingering. I'm going to read a bunch of really short poems. We wrote sort of haiku-like things in my group, and these follow the 5-7-5 syllabic pattern. My long poems bored everybody so badly that I finally decided I would write short poems, and that's what I've done. They rhyme. Richard Wilbur showed me this form. It's been fun. I've learned something from it. But anyway, they're all little. They're all short. They're in different themes. But they're more like epigrams, really. This one's called Plans. Weigh odds, pray, pay bills, tell truth, love well, serve real gods. Meanwhile, daffodils. Palm steepled, we pray. Napalm swamp of the sunrise. Name God again day. I had a shoulder operation a year ago, and look at that. I mean, pretty good. I wasn't doing that a year ago. This poem is called Post-Op. Post-op, I'm pure style. Matthew, this is for you and what you said about your having no organs. Post-op, I'm pure style. Mona Lisa déshabille, oxycodone smile. Andrew, this one's for you, for you gourmands. With au juice, it's called, which you see on menus sometimes. Or even without. Good either way, especially with a nice cold stout. Contraindicated. Don't beat up on yourself, they say. I disagree. You've earned it, I'm sure. Now, love. Main theme, right? I'll read some about love. Lo, Lord swung bola, circle and parabola, love too, ooh la la. Riddle. He said cuddle sack. What she heard was cul-de-sac. Which one got the sack? This is a December-May marriage. December's plans. This is before the marriage. December's plans. Hair, cut. Portia, wax. Shoes, shine. Shave. Insofar as possible, prenup. May's plans. Curl hair, do nails, wax panty line. Who's the fairest? Go for no prenup. Here's another hard one. Paleolithic diet. Ray, the waistline wars. What's the one surefire, no-fail weight loss way? Divorce. These are kind of hard. Like heat split fruit. The daughter catches mirrors. The mother watches too. Lips like matches. Is this a dagger, or the young man notices himself reflected in a blade? The knife thus flattered is made foolish. Sheathe the knife. Tripe, the knife mutters. Women's wisdom. This is not a cult. If men do it, it can't be all that difficult. A marriage. Ray, supper and roux. She, zucchini soup tonight. He, what did I do? Brenden, this one's for you. That book. Camera, called Snapshot. Camera linger. Time it takes smiles to crumple under a finger. You wrote a much better poem than that, with it ending like that. Oh well. Here's a love poem to my daughter. It's called Cackle and Snort. Brenden, this is a sleep poem too. Cackle and Snort. It's my daughter doing her version of Brendan's poem in her sleep. Cackle and Snort. She was a baby. Listen, Maeve, my lamb, laughing in her sleep. I wish I was there. I am. A few about the poet. The poet. He goes on hands and knees, under sun, through sweet corn snow, portaging his skis. That's what we've been talking about all for the last 2 days in my seminar. This is for my students too. No poetry today. No faculty, not damned unfecund difficult to fork out felt thought. Day is done. The day is done when unstriving, with a capital U, when unstriving finds that state in Zen tradition known as email mind. Last one of these. Wakarimasu, Assistant Professor San. These are not haiku. I'm going to finish with an elegy because Matthew read some very affecting ones and we heard a number of them. It's the title poem of this book, The One Strand River. And I guess it's germane to the writerly conversation because it's based on a nursery rhyme. We've been talking about these short forms, riddles, weather rhymes, epigrams, proverbs, and that kind of thing. They interest me a great deal, these kind of subliterary forms that survive without professors to propagate them. And nursery rhymes are probably among that lot my favorite group. One of my favorite nursery rhymes, which is a strange and mysterious one, goes like this. Gray goose and gander, waft your wings together and carry the good king's daughter over the One Strand River. I love that, as is often the case with poems, for many years before I understood even what the One Strand River was. The strand is the English version of strand. It means the beach. And the shore, the One Strand River is the ocean, the river with only one shore. But of course it makes us think of another river famous in myth that has one shore in this world. And so this poem is an elegy for my sisters. The figure it's trying to locate itself. So their navigational instruments are mentioned. It tries to get itself located in time and in the coordinates of space and figure out where is the moment now. That's what's happening in it. The rings are the rings of an armillary sphere. See them, it's that kind of the celestial globe which has the ecliptic and the paths of the. That's it. Here is ring terrain, and here is ring marine. This is the lower troposphere in the middle Holocene. This is a water clock. This is a green rain. This is a sundial filed sharp on the slant of the sunlight's grain. Look, a watchwork iris. Here it's bronze spring. I think of the story of Osiris figured on a ring. This is an eye unbluing, the copper green change. This is the tide of the One Strand River lapping ring terrain. Grey goose and gander, how long have we together? Green, the memory of love, as blue a change of weather. Rain, 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 scattering down the sky, where heart's an armillary sphere of rainbows in the eye. Now the water clock, a trickle under rhyme. And oh, I fear for the good king's daughter, crossing over time. I stand on the bank of the One Strand River, river blue nor green, and where is now with the good king's daughter over ring marine. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Ed was so kind enough to pass the microphone off for me to introduce my friend Diane Wakoski. And I wore, I wasn't sure if I'd be introducing her, but I wore my Diane shirt. Yeah. I'm really excited to hear you read. So Diane Wakoski has a long and rich history in American poetics. She's published numerous books, have received numerous accolades. But I just wanted to take a moment to tell you not about her life as a poet in public, but her life as a poet in my life, in my intimate life. I always feel like I'm arriving late to parties, partly because I arrive around 1 a.m. and partly because it takes a long time, it seems, for me to catch on to something or to hear about something. And I felt that with Diane and her work. I think I first read a Diane Wakoski poem when I was probably like 30 or 32, around there. And I was in a bookstore in Eugene, Oregon, and picked up this book that just looked really beautiful called The Butcher's Apron, and opened it up and read a poem about coffee that just made me sit down in the bookstore, and then read an amazing poem about tea and about salad and about all these wonderful things. And it was this moment where I thought, what the fuck have I been doing? Like, why haven't I been reading this person? Why have I been ignoring? Like, people mention her name and I just am like worried about other things. I carried that book around with me forever, and I still buy copies of that book and hand them out to people to keep in their kitchens. And from that book, it led me to other books by Diane. And then at one point, I was with a friend of mine. We were traveling to do a reading. He's a fiction writer and journalist. And he asked me who I was reading. And I said, "Oh, have you ever read this poet, Diane Wakoski?" And he said, "Yeah, she was my teacher." And then I got really creepy. And I was like, "Well, do you have her address or her phone number? Or can I email her or something?" And he was like, "Yeah, why don't I email her first?" Dude. And then maybe. He was very nice. He gave me Diane's email, and I wrote her. And we met, and we started writing emails back and forth. And we met the first time in person at an AWP, and met for breakfast. And I, again, being creepy, I brought down like 100 books. I brought down like every single of her books, and like packets and like papers she wrote and turned in grade school I had somehow found and purchased. But even with all that, she forgave me. And after forgiving me, she and I wrote back and forth and wrote poems to each other back and forth. And her poetry is definitely, her work is one of the three things that has affected me greatly as a poet, as a person, and as a young man. So I give you Diane Wakoski.
Let's see, let me adjust this. Is this good? Okay. I'm going to begin with a food poem. This is an old poem, and I'm actually reading this for you, Ed, because Ed is teaching the ode this week, and I thought, oh, I have an ode. This is called the ode, it's called Ode to a Lebanese Crock of Olives. This is going to get in my way, so let me step a little closer. I have this problem of it bisects my vision, so I'm trying to get it in the right place. Maybe if I take these papers out. I finally learned my lesson to fiddle around before I get started, so pardon. I do this, then I can stand here like this and hold them like this. Ode to a Lebanese Crock of Olives for Walter's Aunt Libby diligence in making olives. As some women love jewels and drape themselves with ropes of pearl, stud their ears with diamonds, band themselves with heavy gold, have emeralds on their fingers or opals on white bosoms, I live with the still life of grapes, whose skins frost over with the sugar forming inside, hard apples and delicate pears, cheeses from the sharp fontina to icy blue, the aromatic chèvre, bourseau, boursin, a litany of thick breads, dark wines, pasta with garlic, soups full of potato and onion and butter and cream, like the skins of beautiful women, are on my sideboard. These words are to praise Walter's Aunt Libby for her wonderful olives, oily green knobs in lemon. I often wonder, had I been born beautiful, a Venus on the California seashore, if I'd have learned to eat and drink so well. For with hummingbirds outside my kitchen window to remind of small elegance, and mourning doves in the pines and cedar speaking with grace, and the beautiful bodies of lean, blonde surfers dancing on terraces, surely, had I a beautiful face or elegant body, surely I would not have found such pleasure in food. I often wonder why a poem to me is so much more like a piece of bread and butter than like a sapphire. But with mockers flying in and out of orange groves and brown pelicans dipping into the Pacific, looking at camellias and fuchsia, an abundance of rose and the brilliant purple ice plant which lined the cliffs to the beach, life was a still life for me, and a feast. I wish I'd known then the paintings of Rubens or David, where beauty was not only thin, tan California girls, but included all abundance. As some women love jewels, I love the jewels of life. And were you, the man I love, to cover me naked with diamonds, I would accept those too. Beauty is everywhere, in contrasts and unities. But to you, I could not offer the thin, tan, fashionable body of a California beach girl. Instead, I would give the richness of burgundies, dark brown gravies, gleaming onions, the gold of lemons, and some of Walter's Aunt Libby's wonderful olives from Lebanon. Thank you, Aunt Libby, from a failed beach girl out of the West. This next poem I wrote in response to Matthew's poem, The King, which is in his collection, Mayakovsky's Revolver. The circumstances, I have a new and wonderful small press publisher, Anhinga Press. They're in Florida, and they published my most recent collection of poems, The Diamond Dog. And I was having a conversation with one of my editors a few months ago, and he said, "Diane, why don't you write a Diamond Dog poem about Florida?" And I thought, well, since I go down to their Other Words conference in St. Augustine, Florida, once a year, and that's the place where there's, guess what, the fountain of youth that Ponce de Leon found, or supposedly, I decided, I'll write this. The Diamond Dog follows me to the court of Ponce de Leon. They announce me as a princess. My little diamond dog tapping beside me, unleashed, and I am wrapped and shod in silk tissue, curtained as if by dragonfly wings, and someone says, "Enough, give her the gift." I am from Southern California, the desert, yucca-belled, adobe-roofed, bougainvillea cascaded, ice plant barricaded, so water is the gift anticipated. Lizards, a coach drawn by lizards, my favorite desert detail from Cinderella's transformation. But now I offer my hand, waiting for a glass of desert water that will transform me. So clear it will hold youth, it will taste like orange blossoms. First, they call the Diamond Dog, and he runs to the king with a red crown. Then they unwrap my dragonfly silks and ask me to step out of my rose-petal shoes. Naked, I wait for the gift, the shower, the waterfall, the geyser, or a sprinkle of drops, a glassful. But the gift is not water. It is invisibility. Not youth, but infinite age. I vanish in the court of Ponce de Leon. No one believes the fountain exists, but if it doesn't, what was the gift? My favorite meal, breakfast. This poem, too, is an older poem, reprinted in Emerald Eyes. In the Spanish kingdom of my living room, the morning sunshine. A polished wooden table gleams. Silence is the reflection of burnished woods, pine, maple, bamboo, waxed to catch the yellow sun. Outside the wall of windows, more woods, these turning to burgundy and gold, russet, scarlet, the wind moving especially, the green-leaved ones, the branches fluttering and bowing, my courtiers, my trees. The kettle's boiling now, one with water to scald the pot, the second with boiling water for the tea, this morning scented Earl Grey, another courtier, this one perfumed, a dandy, one of those two beautiful men I cannot resist. On my pine and yellow canvas chair I rest, drinking the tea from a white bone china cup. A remaining crumb from last night's crusty French bread is being dazzled on the table's surface now. An opal, a pearl, ivory, a minor jewel dropped from the chest. In the south window, 4 sweet basil plants have reached the height of 18 inches each, their lime green leaves pungent when touched. I give each a little clear water and pinch off, forming bud clusters. This morning, an egg poached in water containing a few drops of white rice vinegar, its soft oval body resting in a poaching cradle of tin on 3 tiny legs, its stiff upright handle remaining cool above the boiling white water. Now, I turn the egg out on the platter of translucent orange bordered with yellow and black. It lies there with a vulnerable film over the yolk, while I take my small silver scissors and snip 4 large leaves from another basil plant, this one growing in the kitchen window. The silver blades slice the leaves in ribbons over the cooling egg. Alone at the kitchen table, with my plate, my single herbed egg, a goblet of iced water with a fresh sprig of mint, also from the kitchen window garden, and my china cup of hot tea, I sit down in my morning kingdom. Everything we will ever have is present in each day's life. There is no more. Thus I need this morning's royalty, the immortality of the flesh, the music of wood, my perfect view of the autumn swamp. And my last poem is a poem I wrote for another poetry correspondent I have, Susan Elb, who, when Jack Gilbert died, sent me an elegy for Jack Gilbert that she had written. And in it, she described him as having grizzled November in his voice. And those of you who know me, even if you've only known me for 2 days, know that I believe that argument and debate and disagreement is the source of intellectual discourse and fun. And so while I was interested and liked Susan's poem, I really felt I had to quarrel with her. And it took me about a year to figure out, what I wanted, because I loved her phrase, grizzled November, but it wasn't my take on Jack Gilbert, because when I was young, I know it doesn't seem like possible I ever was, when I was an undergraduate at Berkeley, I had sort of a reputation as this strange, mysterious, long-haired poet, and in San Francisco, Jack Gilbert, who is older than I am, but who hadn't yet won the Younger Poets Award or published very much, who was always interested in everything, heard about me and called me up and said he wanted to meet me. And so I have this early impression of Jack. Grizzled November. It was wafer-like the January afternoon when I was 20, sitting on the lip of a Berkeley fountain. You introduced yourself to me, Jack, and I remember you as lambent, keen, a wood sprite camouflaged with leaves, books of poetry stuffing your pockets, your voice the glass stem of a pipette flower. Everything was talk and the excitement of voice. Everything was spiky and our shared ambitions to spin the world into disk, whirling into space of invented memory. The afternoon had no beginning, neither an ending. Northern California's sun was strained and distilled, became the liqueur we would over the years separately imbibe, drop by drop. Eau d'argent. The essence Susan heard, perhaps, crackling into your voice as grizzled November, until it turned into the bear of stars, Ursus Major, who walks, yes, grizzled, across my personal ancient sky. But to me, your voice will always be January's watery silver sun, the parchment silver sun of the past, a runic mouthful, a wintry wafer left on my tongue, elfin and mercurial. Thank you.
Again, my great thanks to all of the readers tonight for coming here and working, and reading, sharing themselves. And to all of you, thanks for coming tonight. And we'll see, I think, 80% of you at 9 in the morning, sharp, and 100% of you next year at 9 in the morning. So good night.